Well, hello, everyone who is joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I could not be more excited to be back with one of our hospital artists in residence. I'm Sophia Valera-Heinecke, and I'm the program coordinator here at the Creative Center at University Settlement, which has been providing free arts programs to people living with cancer and other chronic illnesses for over 25 years. With me also is our Creative Center artist in residence at Mount Sinai West in outpatient oncology, Nikki Skiro, who is going to be leading us through an activity that combines a little bit of a festive air for the holiday season, but really allows us to access our creativity using simple materials and a very important additional artist, our oven at home. Nikki is a native New York artist who holds an MFA in 2006 and a BFA from 2002 from Hunter College. Nikki has also exhibited extensively in galleries, museums, nonprofits, and alternative spaces, as well as home and abroad. Most notably, she has shown work in the United States and China. Nikki is also a classically trained actor and dancer. This project was really specifically sort of prompted by a bronze sculpture cast in 1955 that I'm going to have Nikki speak a little bit more about, but it's by a very famous artist named Giacometti, who I think lived and worked in multiple parts of the world, but is very well known for this sculpture that's called, I believe, the Thin Big Head. Is that right, Nikki?
And that's how it translates from French.
You speak French as well, is that true?
And I mean, I can read it and understand it, but I don't sound so good when I speak it. I do it in emergencies for the other person. The other party does not speak English, but it's not great.
An amazing skill to have, and one that really leads well into the art historical context. In your work as an artist in residence, it seems like you often bring really specific projects to the patients and the participants that we work with. Is this a kind of project that you've done before in the hospital?
Something like this. Like in the hospital, I typically use like polymer clay, which is a clay that it doesn't fix until you bake it. So like if somebody's, has multiple treatments, they can work over different sessions, and then I can hold it for them when they come back until they're ready to finally bake it. This clay that we're making today is great and easy and accessible, but it does start to dry on you. That's why we're gonna have like a little shot glass of water to dip our fingers in and kind of keep it moist if it does that. So it's like a one session working clay to get it would keep it smooth textured. So I never really used this in the hospital, but the techniques I'm going to teach you today I have.
Awesome. Well, should we get started? I feel really excited to just see the process of making the salt dough, because it's pretty unusual that we're making the central material that the whole project will be based off of, and it's really simple materials that most people already have at home. In just a moment, I am going to put all of the supplies into our chat. And I do want to know I do want to let our live audience know that we will take questions at any time through the Q&A function. If you are accessing our meeting today on a desktop computer, there is a little toolbar at the bottom of your meeting. You can click the Q&A icon at any time to ask questions, and I will be monitoring that for our whole session today. So let's get started, Nikki. I'm going to pull those supplies up.
Okay. And I can go over them here also while you do that. I have a cup of flour, tightly packed and like as if you were baking, and a half a cup of salt. And I'm going to add a half a cup of lukewarm or room temperature water. And I got some skewers and toothpicks. You're only going to need one toothpick if you do like the traditional bust that we're going to do. But if you decide to make like ornaments or something, you might want to use the toothpicks if they're going to be that kind of size. And I have some corks, which we're going to use to make armature along with the skewers. You can use string. That's what I had in the instructions, and scissor. But I have this really thin wire that I'm just going to use to wrap up those skewers at some point. So I just have a little wire cutter instead of scissors. And I have a box cutter to slice this cork in half.
Awesome. So it seems like there's a couple of categories of materials here. There's what we need to make the dough, and then there's the things to create the sort of like shape and form of either our sculpture or holiday ornament, if you'd like to make it festive. Should we kind of walk through the recipe of making the dough first?
Sure. So first I have a cup of flour and a half a cup of salt in this bowl, and I have a spoon. And I am going to stir that together as good as I can and try to get it nice and even.
I always wonder when recipes, this gets me in definitely a cooking mindset as well. When lukewarm water or like really kind of integrating the dry materials together, if you don't do that, what happens if the water isn't lukewarm, if things aren't stirred together, right?
I think maybe it gets sticky in a different way,
It's just not quite the texture that you need to create kind of the smoothness of the sculpture.
Yeah, like maybe the flour gets a little clumpy or something.
Yeah.
So I will just like make a little hole kind of thing and pour a little bit. And then a little more. A little more. I'm not very delicate. Maybe people who are bakers will have a better technique. And then I'm just gonna mix it together until it becomes something I can work with my hands.
Yeah, so we're really looking for the consistency of like a homemade bread even.
Yeah, it's totally like dough. That's why I guess they call it salt dough clay.
Salt dough.
So here it's kind of like clumpy. So I'm just going to take my hands in there and.
I'm going to switch to the overhead view so we can get in on the action. And in the overhead view, I think folks can get a little bit of a better glimpse of some of the different project options that you've created. Because really, once we get through this first creating the kind of basis of the project, it can go in any number of ways.
I don't know if it's because my apartment is dry, but it feels like it might need a little more water in my clay. Huh. So.
Yeah, I think New York apartments, depending on when they were built, the temperature and the way heat moves through them and the style and consistency of the oven, those are all kind of variables that will make this project a little bit different for everyone. So excited to hear from our audience what if their apartment helps them out or doesn't do them any favors.
So you get this nice kind of dough texture. This is going to be the clay we're going to work with. I'm just going to keep massaging it until it's more consistent. So I'm going to put that on the side for a minute and then get the armature set up so then we can put I don't want to put the paper down until the cutting is done. So when you have your dough kind of ready, put it on the side.
And the armature is the sort of internal structure of the sculpture?
Yeah, it's like, think about like skeleton and muscles, right? So clay can get, like when it can get heavy in certain areas, and the armature kind of holds things up and holds things together and keeps it strong inside. So you can use a cork and cut it the long way. to create like the shoulders, but we have a lot of clay. I mean, I cut the recipe in half. There was a lot of clay. Like I made all of this stuff with the original, but this is still very small. Depending, if you're gonna make an ornament, like a little bust ornament, this might be perfect. But I'm probably gonna add some tin foil around this to beef it up.
Awesome. We have our first question, Nikki, which is, how do you correct the texture if you may have added too much water?
Ooh, I would add more salt and flour, but do it in the 2-to-1 ratio. So maybe if you have a shot glass or something.
Yeah.
The tricky thing about this, if it gets too wet.
Yeah, we want to have that nice kind of dry, solid consistency. Nikki, I was looking at your hands and there's no, once in a while when you make bread dough, you have to keep kind of flouring your hands so there isn't that sort of residue. And your hands are really clean and dry, meaning that dough is really congealing together.
It sucks it up, it takes it right up. So, so the skewers, so I cut my cork in half. And if you're going to make an ornament, you might want to keep the cork whole and stick some toothpicks in if you're going to have appendages, right? So like maybe it's like this and you have your one for the head and you have like 2 arms and 2 legs, or maybe you're making like a reindeer or a dog. You can use the cork in that way, and the toothpicks, because they're easier, you don't have to cut them. For the skewers, we want to keep them point size down, and I'm going to tie it before I cut them because I think it makes it easier to cut them. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's try it. I'll try it a different way. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off because I like to have a nice long neck. It's up to you. If you're doing a specific person or kind of a caricature.
And Nikki, well, yeah, you're being, ooh, nice. I'm going to switch to the overhead view so we can see. But my question was, so for these armature pieces, what kind of material should they be so that they can go in the oven safely?
The oven temperature is going to be very low, so you can pretty much put anything in these.
Okay, great.
I recommend tin foil because it's really malleable and easy, and these wooden skewers and toothpicks are great. The cork is great. And even if you're using thread to tie these together, it's such a low temperature, anything can go in there. Fabric. I have put human hair on sculptures in the oven at a low temperature.
I hope it was your hair.
It was.
That is dedication. I love that. I'm going to go to the spotlight. We're seeing a close-up of that wrapping now. Awesome.
I'm just going to do a little, tie them together a little bit. And then I'm going to stick them into the cork. So we got like something like this, right? And because my sculpture is going to be a little bit larger, I'm going to just take some tin foil. I'm going to go around my skewers and my cork and kind of make those shoulders a little bit larger. Because this is going to be the shoulders of our bust. We have the neck and we are going to have the head attached. It's tough. And then we just make sure that it stands nice. I'm going to add a little more shoulder from that other side.
Tinfoil is such a forgiving material. It's really such a good thing to work with.
I love it for sculpture. I use this so much in the hospital. I've had people, first-time sculptors, make dragons and like all kinds of. Oh, one woman made a pig, like it was like the size of a baby pig.
Oh, that's so cute.
I mean, it came out great. But we worked a lot with tinfoil for the armature and wire. So if you got that ready, you can go on to the next step, which, I mean, some people would say just throw the clay right on. I'm going to take a little more tin foil. And I'm going to give my neck some meat, just a little bit of meat. And then I'm going to kind of juice it up on the top to create like a skull for my head.
Nikki, we have another great question. It seems like you could do this anyway, but how many skewers did you use as that base? Was it 3?
I used 3.
That gives it just a little bit more of sort of sturdiness, I would assume.
Yeah. Kind of, and then, you know, they're in 3 different, secured in 3 different places in the cork, because sometimes the clay gets heavy.
Yeah.
Depending on how big, if you're like me and you like to make a big head. So I got my armature pretty much done here. Now I'm going to start putting clay onto the shoulders on the base. So I just take some clay, kind of roll it into a little bowl. I have my a little water glass filled with some water here, just in case like the clay gets a little dry, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
But just tiny bit, because one of our participants saw how powerful the water can be.
Yeah, we want to create a real thickness with that clay.
I got another ball. I'm going on the other side. And you can see clearly here. I pulled it up.
Yeah, that is very clear.
Okay.
And I would assume that you are aiming to cover that whole, all of the tinfoil needs to be fully covered. Is there a thickness that you recommend for the covering?
Not for this, it doesn't matter. It's up to you. I mean, you might even choose to have some of the tinfoil show. Or maybe it's, you know, I don't know. It's up to you. Maybe on this bust, it's not, there's no real place for it, but you could have it like showing as like a collar or something, because it, you know, becomes part of the sculpture. But I'm going to cover it up just for the demonstration's sake. And you just want the bottom to be nice and secure so that when you get to the head has a foundation. So what I do is I'm going to build out also kind of in the front and the back. I'm just going to build the clay here. So I kind of stick that new ball there, and then I assimilate it to the rest. I blend it in, push it into the rest of the bust.
Nikki, do you ever use other tools to create like texture in the work?
Yeah, I mean, like for different kinds of clay, there are different kinds of tools. But for this, what we're going to do today, you can do a lot just with a toothpick, actually, or a skewer, or whatnot. I mean, so we're going to just work with that today. All right, so I'm content with my base. And I'm going to start moving up to the neck. Is everybody good so far? Any questions?
No, those were just our only 2 questions so far. I assume that people are gonna stop typing into their devices after a certain point because their hands will be covered.
Hands will be dirty. That's a good point.
So we'll do our best to be very thorough.
So I forgot an important part, which was to put some baking paper underneath this. Since my baking paper is far away and my hands are already dirty, I'm going to use tinfoil. So I took that little wormy piece and I'm just kind of wrapping it around my neck now. Nice and easy.
And I think it's great too that people can just kind of put it all on the tinfoil and then sort of keep working over it to create the texture that they desire. Because maybe you want your bust to have scales. Maybe
Yes.
you want some frown lines in the face. There's many details that you can incorporate
Yes.
even before you get to the embellishment stage.
Yes. I mean, and once we have our structure set out, I can show you how to do a few of those things with like a spoon and whatever, all the materials we have here.
Cool.
So I'm just gonna get this head on. The nice thing about this kind of clay also is you don't have to worry about the air inside as you would like when you do like traditional clay. If there are any air sacs, it'll explode.
Oh yeah.
It always terrifies me to put so much love into something and then puff, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so interesting too, because I know a little bit about, like more traditional slab sculpture with clay, but the original sculpture that kind of sparked this idea was bronze cast. And I'm wondering, I don't have really any knowledge of how, with a bronze sculpture, how you would create kind of that armature or how you would sort of install those details. I assume that it's a pretty dangerous process involving high heat and liquefied metal. So have you ever done
Yeah.
any bronze work?
I mean, a lot of people, there are bronze specialists that will, they facilitate that for artists. So sometimes artists will come with sculpture and they will make a mold. Sometimes it destroys the sculpture, but then it'll have the finished piece will be bronze. So like they will actually help the artist do that. I don't know about doing that on your own if you're not.
No, I would not recommend that. But
You're not like
it's just something that seems very intense, and I'm just curious. But I think that Google will answer my questions later.
Thank goodness for Google, right?
Oh, let's see. We have another question. So this is something Nikki has spoken to, but if the dough dries out, what do you do? And especially as you're putting it on that form, how do you add water to it kind of once it's on the mold?
And I dip them into this little shot glass that I have with water right here. And I just wet my fingers. And then I pick up a piece of clay and like that's like kind of just enough to like moisten it right back up again. And then it's nice and moist.
Awesome. So no special tools required, just dexterous fingers and a little bit of water.
Dip your fingers in the water, but just keep it small. So I'm almost covered up here.
And now once that's all sort of, everything is kind of congealed together, when you lift that sculpture, Nikki, is there a special way that you want to handle it to keep the structure in place?
I mean, I wouldn't recommend lifting it. I mean, if you're like, normally I would say just do it right on your baking sheet and then pop it in the oven. But, if you lift it from the base. Like if you want to like pick it up for some reason. I'm picking it up to show you guys just, on this thing and that thing, but. So I have kind of a skull here, kind of more meaty in the front, little draw, like a beginnings of a jawline. Here's my front, my other side. So we can start. So now like at the base of the neck, I just started to fatten it up a little bit here and just connect it to the bust a little more so that it's a little more supported.
Yeah, just again, kind of creating the shape and the blend that you want.
Yep. And I keep mine on the rougher side, but you can smooth it down, take time. Just dip your fingers in that water and smooth it down. So I'm going to start to make a nose.
All right, we'll switch back to the other view.
I don't have enough meat here to pinch, so I'm just going to add on more meat to the front. And typically eyes go to in the center of your head, like between the top and the bottom. Typically, you know, everybody's different, and you can, depending on if you're making this bust look like someone or modify it accordingly. So I'm just going to give myself an idea of where the eyes are, and then kind of pinch the nose here, pinch a bridge, and then kind of pull it out, and then I'm going to push it in right underneath the bottom.
That's great. It's great to see your hands doing the work because you're being simultaneously like pretty strong with your movements, but also making just like pretty little movements as well.
Okay. And now I'm going to add a tiny little bit, another little ball for the chin area because I don't have a lot of meat to grab there again. So if you can see, you can see it. I'm gonna tip it over for you guys so you can see it a little better. So here's where you would you would pinch it. You can pinch out that chin a little bit here. And then you get your toothpick. My hands are dirty, so I'm gonna use a skewer. I can take this out of the ornament here. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, I'm taking this guy. So you could just take your toothpick and you're gonna make one little kind of impression. Then you push up another impression until you start to get those lips, you see?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get your mouth. Now, you can go in and change the expression. Maybe this one is smiling a bit. Push this in a little bit. But it kind of starts to give you you could also, now if you want bigger lips, roll up some more clay. And stick it on also. Take this, push it up. Use the skewer to go up into the nostrils. And you could use it to even press down to give yourself the indent on top of the nostrils. Now, expressions, I guess I'm gonna make this one smile, I think. So I'm just gonna take 2 small balls of clay and kind of put them as cheeks. So like kind of at the bottom of that nostril, but above the lips.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, check the side because it's a 3-dimensional guy. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and how will we know if what we're making is getting too top heavy? Will you just kind of sense the balance of it?
You can sense the balance of it because you wouldn't be moving it, manhandling it so much like me. It would probably just be on the. But like that did happen to mine originally, and what I did was I kind of just built out the base a little more on this guy. And I didn't even do the neck, but you could actually build out the neck and make it more supportive. But the skewers are pretty strong in that cork, so it's holding up really well so far. I mean, if you substituted just using tin foil in the skewer, you might have to kind of shoot like this and make your base a little bit bigger and sturdier. But you'll feel it wobble if it's not holding up. Or it starts to tilt a little slowly. All right. So now you're gonna kind of have the side view here. We're gonna add some ears, which are also kind of central, kind of start at the eye, end around just above the mouth usually. So I'm just gonna take a little ball. And kind of stick the side down. You could also use your toothpick to the side of the toothpick to kind of smooth it down. I like to take the toothpick or the skewer and kind of make a hole so the sculpture can hear you. That literally came from the Lille Museum of Modern Art project. I thought it was adorable.
Amazing.
And I have flappy earlobes, so I'm biased and like to make my sculptures have those kind of ears. But
That can be an exercise in deep looking at humans or just really making up a new creature entirely.
Correct. Like you could make wacky ears or take another animal.
I loved Lord of the Rings growing up, and I had a phase where I really wanted the pointy ears like the elves had. That I thought was very cool.
But I think that calls for some pointy ears. We're going to
also, I suppose, sort of part of the expanded world of Christmas as well, having the pointy ears on the elves. So, holiday theme.
Those ears are for you, Sophia.
Thanks, Nikki.
All right. It gives it a totally different look now. It was like kind of innocent, and now it became devious. So I'm going to add it to the other side.
Excellent.
So funny. All right.
That looks great. I'm wondering if if there's a way, I don't know exactly how to handle it, but if you could lift it sort of flat up towards the camera so we can see just a little bit more detail. Wow, that's awesome.
So we have the faces start of gradually forming here. We're gonna add in a brow bone, and then we'll do some eyes.
Awesome.
We're gonna make this guy less demonic.
Not so bad. Come on.
There's something about his little face right now. I don't know.
He just needs a hat eventually.
A funny hat, like a Dr. Seuss hat. We'll make him like a Dr. Seuss Grinch. So I'm gonna take some clay here, and I'm gonna roll up a brow bone and just put it on top of the eyes here. Kind of like a forehead, you know?
Oh.
And this is another opportunity to do something expressive. So if your character is surprised or happy, sometimes the inside of the things come up higher, the eyebrows, because the brow bone kind of defines where the eyebrows would be. So if it's angry, they would go down towards the center. So you can play with that. See, that just made him look a little more angelic. I don't know. It's all about the details. I'm just gonna go back in here. I'm actually going to open his mouth a little with this. And lift up his smile, so he's smiling. All right, so you can take your fingers and kind of press in some eye sockets here at this point. You should have enough juice around there.
Nice.
Okay, and now I'm going to just roll little balls and stick in some eyes. So if you're making ornaments, you know, this is all the same. You're just covering up these little guys, making several of them, and you're going to stick them in the oven and cook them all the same. We're just kind of focused on the bust today, but you could be doing anything with this clay.
Yeah, and if you're using the cork in another sort of formation, it's still, you would recommend, Nikki, using the tin foil to cover to sort of create a little more body, right?
I like to. It depends what you're making, really.
Okay, cool.
But if you're having appendages, definitely. And if you want like longer appendages that bend, I would even say wire. Like
Yeah.
get some flexible, lightweight wire and stick it right in the cork. And I mean, you could make like some kind of long-legged bird or Grinch or.
Cool. I think just that's a good distinction to make, that it's a creative decision, not necessarily like a, I guess, a craft decision, maybe. Sort of this distinction between, well, what do we need to create what we envision, and what do we need to create the detail that makes it our art, as opposed to just, you know, like a paint by numbers.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, I would hope that this really becomes yours. All right, so this is getting Lord of the Rings-ish for you.
Yeah. It's very much like holiday Gollum.
Yeah. Gollum the Grinch.
It feels very personal to me now, so thank you for your collaborative spirit.
I'll mail it to you when I cook it.
Awesome.
So you could choose to open the eyes or keep them closed. If you open the eyes, I would use this guy. You just kind of pinch up the eyelid. And pinch down. Is the light okay? Can you see that?
Yeah, the light is great. And if you want to lift it up a little bit, just straight. Yeah, we can see that. No, right here. Yeah, that's perfect in the sort of overhead view.
There you go. So,
that looks great.
Okay, so we're going to just do the other side.
Yeah. We have another question. How would you store any leftover dough, or can you store it? Should it just be tossed away?
I would say toss it away. Or just make I just made as much as I could because, or Google it, because I wouldn't, maybe you could wrap it up in
like saran wrap,
maybe, but it just seems to dry so quickly to me that I wouldn't know what it would be like. Maybe you could revive it with some water, but it just seems so temperamental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think more is definitely more with these, meaning it's really surprising how just a cup of flour makes so much dough.
Yes.
But for those who do the project, let us know. You can always email us at info@thecreativecenter.org if you've given this project a try and you have tips that you'd like to pass on to others. We can always continue to expand the information when we post these webinars on YouTube. That is in the comments section, or that's just in the description. So we want to hear from you, how this project works, what you think of it. And yeah, if the leftover dough can be stored. And thanks for those who have been asking questions. There have been some really good, insightful ones.
Okay. So now, yeah, he looks like a nicer guy, I think, now than he did before.
It's all in the eyelids, I think. The eyelids really made him, gave him a very human quality.
Okay, and so we could make a hat. How are we doing on time?
Well, we're at 5:11, so maybe folks can experiment at home with hats. We have about, I would say, like, we were hoping to end around 5:30. So up to you, Nikki. If you want to go for a hat, you can go for that or not.
All
I'm
right,
really curious.
I'll show you a hat real quick. So I'm just going to take a little more tin foil. And I'm going to just stick it here. And
That's a big hat.
it's a big hat.
I don't know if my oven is that tall, actually.
You can't move the
racks. Oh yeah, you're right. I can move the racks. Clearly, I just don't know how to use an oven.
I definitely did that once with a sculpture. I made this beautiful sculpture. I got to the oven. It didn't fit.
Oh no.
And it didn't even occur to me that it wouldn't fit. I was like,
well, that's because you were really deep in your process, which I know will happen to me, but I don't usually work in any kind of visual medium where I can't kind of take it back or cover it up.
I called up all my friends. I was like, how big is your oven? Can I come over?
That's how you know you have a real creative community, when people are like, yeah, of course you can come over and use my oven to bake your sculpture. It's totally fine, Nikki. Don't worry about it. That's what friends are for.
Okay.
Wow, what a hat.
And so I'm gonna. Now you could in turn make hair like they originally said in the project. You could just put clumps of clay on top and mold some hair, but I don't know. I don't know if this guy needs hair.
Now, I feel like we probably, since it's around dinner time, perhaps folks are thinking that they can just bake their piece right now and it will be done. Nikki told me at the beginning of our webinar today that the baking time for these projects is a little bit longer than I had expected. Nikki, do you want to speak to that a little preemptively?
Sorry, guys. Yeah, it takes a little long. It's at a low temperature. It's about like 200 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's going to take you about 2.5 to 3 hours. I would say 3 hours if you've made something like this size, especially. And around like 2.5 hours, what I do is I open it up and I turn the sculpture over so that the bottom gets some heat.
The last half hour goes to the bottom to just
I mean, you don't have to, but I think I just found that it was still wet, so that's what I did on the first guy. So yeah, I mean, like, you could fuss with this forever. Like, as I'm looking on the computer screen, I'm seeing new things I want to change, but you will you play. That's what art is. You get lost and you lose yourself in some time, and then when you cook it, you can paint it with acrylic, which I think is great because it seals it even more, and they will last. Especially, like, you could also I was showing Sophia earlier, you can glue to it. I've used like stones to make eyes and like tassels.
It's really amazing to me that tassel material can just go in the oven at 200 degrees. The sparkly donut's pretty amazing.
Sparkles came after, though. I put it after it was dry. But the tassel, no, you can put anything in that oven, I'm telling you, because
as long as it's 200 degrees, not any higher, right?
Yeah, 200 degrees. I think that sometimes they even suggest like 190, but 200 was fine.
And the painting happens, in traditional kind of slab work, you're glazing before you're firing things. Is that true of this process as well?
No, not with the materials. And you want to use, not all paint will go good with this because it'll probably eat it. So, but acrylic is totally safe. It's like plastic based. So at the end, it kind of really seals it. So I suggest you use acrylic. And there's a really nice matte texture. If you want something glossy, you could always go on it after with like a glaze or a gloss medium or a Mod Podge even, and give it a shine. But the matte is kind of nice. Give it a chance.
Yeah, Nikki, I'm wondering, I'm hoping that our new elf friend won't fall over, but could you hold up the figure that you just had that's painted so we could see that in a little more detail? A little more in the center, sorry. I know you're stretching. Cool, so that's
my flower fingers all over her, but
but that's generally sort of what it's going to look like after one coat of an acrylic paint.
Yeah, this was just like one coat.
Awesome. Yeah, the color is very distinct.
Yeah, and there's a nice texture to it. It's hard to explain, especially now that I got the flower on it, but
that can be wiped off a little bit of.
Yeah, no, that's the thing with this. It's totally safe. I was bold enough to wear black.
The flower hands, yeah, but a nice washable material, so no need to think anything will get ruined. Nice.
All right.
Great. Yeah, I think that looks fantastic. And again, I'm really interested to know what people come up with regards to the sizes. Last question, you said that if we're making something smaller, that piece that you made is around like 3 hours of baking time. Something smaller, maybe a little less baking time, but generally around that 3-hour time frame.
I baked everything together, and those little guys, they were still kind of wet on the bottom after 2.5. I was like, oh, it's fine, 2.5 hours. But then I kind of took it out, and there were like spots that you could see were not uniform in color, and I was like, I'll just put it back for another half hour. I mean, if you put the oven on like after dinner, and you're like watching a movie or something, the time you won't even notice the time. And it was just because I was anxious to see them. It probably felt like forever, but yeah, it's worth it, especially if you make something like a gift for somebody personal or.
Yeah, just one more time, do you mind showing us each of the pieces that you made? Because you made such an interesting variety. Well, there's that one, but then we have the donut, the snake.
The donut.
Donut's very cool. That would be
adorable. It actually looked good without the sparkles. But then, and then this was like my rancid gingerbread man. And then I
was been in Florida, like in the sun.
I just had so much clay. Like I didn't even really think this. I would have made it more round, or I didn't even stuff them. This is just a clay.
Wow.
With nothing in it. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Do you think that impacts the baking time if it's just clay all the way through as opposed to the tinfoil?
It definitely will cook faster with if you use tinfoil, because there's less clay inside to dry.
Yeah.
And it'll dry more thoroughly. But I don't know. I'm not an expert on this particular clay. I've only used it for this tutorial. But yeah, I'm curious to see if everybody's findings. So please let us know and send us pictures of what you made if you can.
Thanks so much, Nikki. Yeah, I think if there are, let's see, I just got one more question. Oh, it's just a comment. That was really terrific. Thank you so much, Nikki. We really appreciate your time today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, awesome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we said before, all of our Creative Center resources are free. These webinars are posted online on our YouTube channel, The Creative Center NYC. So look out if you want to send this video to a friend. It will be posted within the week. And we cannot thank our artist in residence, Nikki enough, just for her time and her energy with this fantastic project. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nikki.
Bye.
Bye.